Hello, and welcome to the Admin Script Editor tutorial video on using the Script Forms Designer. For those that don't know what the Script Forms Designer is, it is a tool that will allow you to create very simple to very complex graphical elements in your script. So you can create a full-fledged form full of controls as either a way to wrap script components yourself or to create an application that you can ship out to your users. Let's just jump right in and take a look at this. The first thing we'll do is open a script, and I will open generic VB script here. Then we're going to launch the Script Form Designer. And here we have the Script Form Designer. And the first thing to notice is it says VB Script Form because we opened a VB script in ACE, but it also says Classic. There are two script form types that you can use. There's a Classic and a .NET. And I'm actually going to use the .NET, so I'm going to close this form, come up to File, and I'm going to select a VBScript.NET form. You also may notice that we have Kickstart and PowerShell options available. PowerShell we don't quite have ready to go yet, but that's going to be coming very soon. So we come here to VBScript form, and we see that it's a .NET variant. And we take a look here, and we have our blank canvas here in the middle. This actually shows us the form that we're working on. And on the left here we have the toolbox. This shows us all of our widgets and all of our controls that we can drop onto the form to bring the form to life, so the form actually does something. On the right side here we have the Solution Explorer. This shows us all of the controls in the form, and it also helps us see which one is the currently active control on the form. In this case, you see Form 1 is highlighted. What that means is that this property grid down here is going to show us all of the properties of the currently selected control, in this case, Form 1. And this properties grid is one of the key elements to the whole application, because this actually allows us to change the properties of not only the form, but any control we drop onto the form. And we're going to see that in just a second. But as an example, let's say I wanted to get rid of the maximize box, which is this box right up here. I can set this property to false by either selecting it and selecting false from the drop down, and you see that it disables, so the maximize box can't be selected. We'll go ahead and put that back for now. But any of these properties can be changed. Okay, we can change the icon, etc., etc. Now, this is just an overview, so we're just going to look at a couple simple things that you can do. We're going to look basically at how to drop forms onto, or drop controls onto the form rather, and then we're going to look at how to respond to those via events and how we can respond to click events and different things like that. So the very first thing we'll do is we're going to drop a button onto this form. Okay, and it's just as simple as clicking and dragging over, and we've got a button on a form. We can click it and move it around anywhere we'd like to go. Okay, we'll go ahead and let's see. Well, let's go ahead and drop a Groupbox on. Okay, and we'll move the Groupbox around. Now you may notice these lines that appear. See the blue vertical line that's connecting the button with the Groupbox? These are called snap lines. And as you put various controls on the form, you'll notice for example, in the old versions of Visual Basic that you may have seen, or even when creating access forms, you would notice grid dots all over the form, and that's how you would line up the controls, via the grid dots. But what we've done is we're using snap lines, so when you are moving, you actually see now the right edge of the checkbox is in line with the right edge of the group box. And this will actually snap, and you see how the checkbox then snaps so that the bottom of the checkbox is aligned with the bottom of the button. Okay, and now you see, and this is the key one to look at with the snap line. If you see that purple underscore, that means that the text in the controls are lined up. So the button 1 text is lined up with the checkbox 1 text. So if I let this go, that really centers them properly when you get that purple line. Okay, anyway, those are called snap lines. If you would like to revert back to the old grid view, you can do that by coming up to Tools, Designer Options, and selecting Snap to Grid. Okay, and then you see this is a more, actually let's go ahead and show the grid as well. Now we can actually see the grid dots, and we see that in fact the edge, the top left edge is snapping to each grid dot. And again, this is an older way to do it, but if this is what you're more familiar with, then feel free absolutely to use it. I much prefer the snap lines myself, so that's what we'll be using. Anyway, I'll delete that control. And now what we have is a group box and a button. What I'm going to do is drag the button into the group box, and what you'll notice is that the cursor changes to the cursor plus that little dotted outline, which means that if I let go, it's actually dropping the button into the group box when I let go. And if you'll notice the Solution Explorer on the top right, the button is a part of the form, but when I let go, the button is now part of the group box. And now if I move this group box around the form, it's the button itself that actually stays anchored to the group box because it's part of the group box and actually not the form. Okay? I hope that's not too confusing for an intro. I don't think so. We'll resize a little bit of this. Now let's get to the fun stuff. How do we actually deal with events? I want to click the button to do something. Well, before we do that, let's try to enforce some good practices here. I'm actually going to name this button. And if you see the name properties at the top, I'm going to say BTN Hello World is the name of my button. Now, depending on your naming convention, you may not prefix the object type with a three-letter prefix for the object type, but I found especially in doing this with the Script Form Designer inside scripts, it's particularly useful so that you can instantly tell what type of object it is. So you can tell the difference between a button or a group box or a label or whatever the case may be. So that's what we'll be doing. And then for the group box, we can name this GRP Hello World or FRA for frame. Those used to be called frames. Whatever you want to call it, it's fine as long as you can do something to differentiate it. We're also going to change the text here. We come down here to the text property. Again, I've selected the button control. Anytime I select a control, that's the properties that I'll be modifying here. So now that I've selected the button, I'm going to come down here to the text, and I'll just double click on the text, which will highlight the text value, and I will say Hello World with an exclamation point. And then I will click on the group box, and I'll change its text as well. This is some group box text. Not too exciting. Okay, now what we're going to do, I'll just move this down a little bit, is we actually want to create well, the first thing we'll want to do before we actually do with the events is we actually want to test the form. So we'll come up here and we'll run this script. And you see this is actually what I'm getting back. And sometimes, as you notice, it doesn't, what the Script Form Designer is rendering in an actual .NET window is not identical to what the script is getting back. And this happens in some situations. Not too often, but I chose an example where that would be the case, where the group box text string measure is just a little bit off. Okay, so now that we see that, we want to come here and expand this a little bit more. And then we can run this and see that, yes, this is what I'm looking for. And again, what you're seeing here in this window, this Form 1, this is actually a script that is running. This is not an actual application. This is a script. And once we have it looking the way we want, then we know we'll be able to insert it into ACE. And we'll do that in just a moment. So now that we know it looks right, we want to add in the appropriate events. Okay, now how do we do that? First, we click on the item that whose event we want to control. Then we come down here to our Properties window, and you notice this only is listing properties. But there's a button here for events. This is the Properties button. This is the Events button. If I click this, this now shows me all of the events that I'm able to control. So what I'll do is click on the Click event, and I'll hit the Enter key. And that will automatically insert a function name called button hello world click. Okay, now that I have that, I'm all ready to go back to ACE. So what I'll do is select File, Insert into Script, okay, and we see that our message is down here, tells us that the form was successfully inserted into ACE. So we'll go back to ACE and we'll see that in fact, yes, it was successfully inserted. And we're going to go ahead and collapse all of these regions. Now what I want to point out to you at this point is exactly what the script form designer has done and what it has inserted for us. Okay? In most cases, you're never going to need to come into this section that says script form designer. This is all stuff that's handled behind the scenes, so you don't have to worry about it. But we'll take a look anyway. When you open it up, you're going to see three regions here. The first is the constructor region. The constructor region just creates either the .NET or the COM object. In this case, kicksforms.system is a prog ID that's pointing to the .NET object. And that's what we specified when we selected new and then VBScript.NET form. Okay? The constructor, once it's created, this region here is never overwritten. So in this constructor region for advanced users, and again, we'll cover more how to do this and what kind of things you would do here later on, but this is just a basic overview. The constructor region and the event loop region do not overwrite once they're first inserted. So you would be able to add, this is some custom constructor code. Okay, you can add in your own, and this will remain here. Once the region is created, it does not get overwritten. The same is true in this event loop. Okay, this is for those of you that are familiar with the development background. This is the equivalent of a message pump that is being used to query for any events that are happening in the form and to respond to those events. So again, this is some custom event code, and we'll collapse this as well. Now this form creation region is a region that gets overwritten every time you update the form and write it back into ACE. Okay, so this region should never be modified in any way. Okay, this form creation region should never be modified. And again, you see how complicated this is just to add a group box and a button. The beauty of the script form designer is you don't have to figure out what all of this is. You can just drop it on the form and insert it directly into ACE. Okay? And then we have, below here, we have our list of functions. And we see we have our button hello world click. And this function allows us to respond to the click event that we created in the script form designer. Now if I go in here into the form creation, and I'm not going to do this every time, but just to point this out, you'll notice that the button hello world.click property points to the function name, which is button hello world click. So we'll collapse that, and then we'll come here, and we will just go ahead and do a message box, and we'll just say hello world from script form designer button. Okay, and that's what we're going to do. So now we're going to go ahead and run this script, and we see that we have the form exactly as we thought we did. And again, this is the script that's running. This is your VB script that's running. And if I click Hello World, I get, in fact, a message box pop-up that says Hello World. Okay? And then I close this form, and the script completes. And that's the end of the script cycle. So what we've done is to create a form, insert a button, and then respond to a button event, which in this case is the click event. Okay, simple, simple. Let's go back to the script form designer one last time. I don't want to look at all of these widgets because we simply don't have the time, but I would like to point out just a couple more items and just give you a foothold to play with some of these things. I'm going to delete this. We've seen the button in work. I'm going to move to a main menu. This allows me to create a menuing system for my application, for my form. And if you notice when I drag that in, it actually put this main menu down here on the bottom, because technically the main menu item is a component. It is not an actual graphical element. Same thing with the timer. If I were to drop a timer control, it shows up down here because it's a component. It's not an actual visual element in the form. I'll delete that timer. Now that we have our main menu, what we'll do is we simply just type into here, File, and then I can click on this and I can say Open, and then on the next one down, I can say Exit. Alright, there we go. So we have File, Open, and Exit. And if you notice, I put ampersands in front of the letters that I wanted to be underlined, meaning that those are the mnemonic letters for the menu items, so that then you could then hit Alt F and then X for the exit command. And you can do that for any of your menu items. You can choose your own mnemonic keys. And typically, you have File, Help, and then whatever else is relevant or pertinent, I should say, to your application. And then let's just run this and see if it actually works. And yes, we're actually getting the menu items that we had asked for. So that's a menu. Another item I'll show you, which is a tree view control. This is a complex control. There's a lot to this one as far as in runtime adding and removing nodes and manipulating it. But it's a very, very powerful control. And from the design, we're just going to take a design time look at this. We're not going to look at how to interact with it in runtime. That'll be the subject of a future video. But the most important property to look at once we've selected our tree view is the nodes property. It's a collection of node objects. So if I hit the ellipsis, I actually get a tree node editor, and I can add multiple top-level nodes, and I can add children underneath that and underneath that, etc. Obviously, I can name the nodes whatever I want. And then once I'm done with all of the node creation, I just hit OK, and then we can see that I actually get the nodes here in design time. If I run it and take a look at it in runtime, I see that I in fact get the exact same information. This is exactly what I'm looking for. Okay? Very good. Now, as a great example of a tree view control, and this is what I'll leave you with. Those of you that have used ACE in the past have used our various wizards. We have a wizard called the Reg Wizard, the Registry Wizard. When this launches, you see that this brings up a tool that looks like regedit, but in fact is our own custom tool. This is not something that we wrote in some other development language. This actually is a Kickstart script code that we created with the script form designer. Actually, an older version of the script form designer when we still had it just as an in-house tool. However, this all is created with the script form designer. Okay, and this lets me browse through my entire registry structure, and of course the wizard itself allows you to create script code on registry operations. So if I were to insert this into ACE, it would insert this registry delete, okay, to delete that value. Okay, this is itself a piece of script code. So if you really want to get a good look at it, you can go ahead and actually take a look at this script code, which is available for download. You can actually download the script code and look at it and see exactly what it is that we're doing. And we did use our script packager to package this into an executable just to make it easy. But that's an example of a very complex application that you can create with this script form designer. It's a wonderful tool. Again, the tree view control is a complex tool. A lot of these are in various stages of complexity. For example, a checkbox, again, that's a pretty simple control to see and use and understand. The list view and the tree view are a bit more complicated, but with just a little bit of effort, you can master those. And again, we'll be having future videos where we detail these more complicated options and show you all of the things that you can do. So that's about it for this whirlwind introduction to the script form designer. We created a form, dropped some widgets on the form, inserted that into ACE, and then responded to various events, in our case the click event. Okay, so look forward to future videos, and thank you very much. Take care.